Hello there, in today's video we're going to talk about why JPEG versus RAW, mirrorless versus DSLR, digital versus film, or cropped sensor versus full frame is ultimately irrelevant in creative photography. If we can realise that and remind ourselves of some of the fundamentals, I think it can really improve us as photographers. Before we get into that though, one RAW that does matter is the RAW Room. It's a brand new online platform that I have created for you. At launch, it already contains 10 hours worth of videos, over 40 videos, and includes the full landscape photography masterclass that did cost £85. There's a water drop photography masterclass coming very soon. There's a weekly podcast on there. There's one-to-one critiques where we can have a chat over Skype or FaceTime, and there's lots of offers and discounts for you on there as well. If you head over to firstmanphotography.com/rawroom or hit the link down below, you can get all that right now for just £5.99 per month, and you can cancel anytime. I'd really love your help to build it into the ultimate photography resource. A little while ago, I was lucky enough to attend the British Photography Awards, and Rankin was there, and he made a small speech, and the first thing he said when he got up on stage was, "I love photography." Now, I thought that was great, because so do I. But in a world where 9 out of 10 conversations about photography are about technical aspect and gear, I think it's important to remind ourselves from time to time just exactly why we love photography. One of the things I encourage every photographer to do is to print their work, because when you do, you then have something tangible, something beautiful, and something valuable to hold that can connect people to your work in a way that viewing an image on a screen just cannot do. There's different ways of doing it, like in a lab and at home. There's different materials you can use. There's different sizes you can do. And it's just such a rewarding experience seeing your work come to life. Once we then start printing our work, a tremendous way to improve your photography is to start then thinking about making the print at the time of shooting the image, rather than it just being an afterthought when you happen to have captured a nice image. It allows us to hone our mind, hone our composition, and slow us down to really make the most of the scene or the subject in front of us. It's a fantastic spot in the Nordics, right high up in the Arctic Circle. What I'm going to do is, just from this very spot, I have found what I think will be 3 really nice compositions that are going to work well together. They'll be edited similar, and I'm going to take them and combine them and print them into a piece of work which will just make this trip worthwhile. It will tell the story of this area, and I think it'll be pretty good. With my photography, I want to remove look from the equation as much as possible. And with any genre of creative photography, we're going just beyond documenting the scene in front of us. We are creating a narrative, telling a story about our experience. If I spin around this way, what is happening over at that cliff at the moment is just simply incredible. It's one of the most amazing things I've ever seen, because I'm just gonna have to spin around this way because I want to keep looking at it. It's actually quite emotional. It's just, I'm lost for words a little bit. Thinking about the print at the time, we're doing essentially what a painter would do, sat in front of a blank canvas. We're visualizing that final piece of work in our mind's eye before we begin. So as we stand in front of our subject, absorbing the moment, enjoying the subject, and taking in our surroundings, we can use all that to create an image that's a combination of the scene in front of us and our feelings towards it. And hopefully that will then evoke an emotion in the viewer. In creative photography, this link between the visualization and the final piece of work is fundamentally the only thing that matters. And it's existed from the very origins of photography. This image here is one of my favourite all-time photographs. It's the Wright brothers taking the very first flight of an aircraft. And as the story goes, this is not a documentary photograph. The brothers put a lot of thought into it. They wanted to capture the moment, to tell their story, to gain attention for their incredible achievement. I think there's a good chance that this was not the exact first flight. They might have had a few practice goes first. But regardless, I don't mind. I love the picture because there's so much story in it, there's so much power in it, and it was clearly planned and thought out, which I absolutely love. What has changed in photography over the years between the visualization and the final print is the technical process contained within. The way our cameras capture the scene has changed. We've gone from the dark room into the light room. But even now, a camera comes nowhere near close to how we personally see that scene with our eyes and our brain. Cameras will continue to develop and move forward, and I'm really not romantic in any way about gear we've had in the past or what we have now. The great Ansel Adams was interviewed in the 1980s, a couple of years before he died, and he was telling a story about how he had donated a load of his negatives to a university so students in the future could develop that film and practice creating prints. But he understood that that may well become obsolete because he had already seen some electronic images. I think that's absolutely fantastic. All that time ago, he saw the future. He saw where things may go. And he was excited about the possibilities of electronic images. Now we've been living in a world where that's been the reality with digital photography for a long, long time. And where cameras are going, I'm very excited to see that, and I'm excited about what that can do for us within that technical area of photography. So if the link between visualization and the final piece of work is primary, then everything else just really pales into insignificance. Whether you're using a cropped sensor or full frame camera just really doesn't matter. Whether you're using iPhone, DSLR or mirrorless, whether you choose to control exposure with filters or with bracketing, it doesn't matter. Whether you shoot JPEG or RAW is pretty much irrelevant. It's your artistic vision and your final piece of work that you produce that counts. I've said this before, but do you remember being taught maths at school? We used to get taught to show our working, and you could even get really high marks for showing you working, even if you got the final answer incorrect. Now, I think photography is the complete opposite because it's an artistic endeavour rather than a scientific one. It's the final image you produce that counts rather than the process you used to get you there. If you shoot in JPEG and you're controlling the contrast, the saturation and the sharpness in camera, that's great. I know a lot of the Fujifilm presets that are contained within the camera are very popular. If that works for you and it matches your artistic vision, then do it, and do it unapologetically as well. I choose to shoot in RAW because I like the extra control it gives me in post-production. It's essentially a digital negative. Now, I'm completely obsessed with the similarities between music and photography. The great Ansel Adams said it best when he said that the negative is like the composer's score. All the information is there, and then the print is the performance. So you interpret that score at various aesthetic, emotional levels, but never far enough away to violate the essential concept. Let's talk about gear briefly, because it's become very trendy to say that the gear doesn't matter. And I'm completely guilty of that at times because I'm trying to encourage people to think more about the artistic side of photography than the technical and the gear. But really the gear does matter, as long as we see it as a tool. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with loving the tools that we use. And I do too. Now I think about gear and purchasing my gear like this. So if you imagine a triangle with three points, and at the top, right at the top, you've got the problem. What problem do you need to solve? So for example, you want to take a photograph, you need a camera. If you want to do a really long exposure, you might need to buy an ND filter, that kind of thing. It's then about budget. So that's another point of the triangle. How much do I need to spend in order to solve that problem? And very often that will be a very sensible decision. But then at the third point of that triangle, you have desire. And that generally will pull you away from your budget. It'll pull you away from purely solving that problem. Now I find that if you can find the sweet spot right in the middle, because to suppress your desire will ultimately make you unhappy. So do listen to that. But it's about trying to find that balance right in the middle of that triangle. And if you get in there, you'll be satisfied and happy with the piece of gear that you've bought, and it will do what you need it to do. So it's visualization, print. Visualization, print. It's by far the most important thing in creative photography. It stands the test of time as well. And everything else that lives in the middle, the technical aspects, the gear, I think it gets too much attention, or more attention than it deserves. That's possibly been whipped up by manufacturers trying to sell us and flog us gear. Like I said last week, it is important to try and master those technical aspects because it frees you to be more creative. But that process between visualization and the final print is your own. Do it your way. We therefore shouldn't be afraid to experiment and to try new things. And we shouldn't care if someone criticizes our process or our workflow. I'll leave you with this thought. There are billions of images and snapshots being uploaded to the internet every single day. And as a photographer, it can be overwhelming and a bit discouraging at times. But by visualizing your photograph and then making a final print, it will immediately elevate your image above all those others. It becomes art.